That dark patch in your backyard that you have been overlooking and skipping past for years is not dead space. It is actually prime real estate for growing food, just sitting there waiting. Mostly because no one has ever explained what thrives in those spots. Here is the reality. There are 11 vegetables that not only tolerate getting just 2 to 4 hours of sunlight, but many of them actually grow sweeter, softer, and tastier in the shade than they ever could baking in the sun. And 2 items on this list will straight up refuse to grow properly if you put them in full sunlight. I am going to walk you through exactly what these are and why they work. Before we dive into the first vegetable, go down to the comments right now and let me know 2 things. What is casting the shade over your yard? Is it a big tree, a tall fence, your house, or a neighbor's garage? And what USDA hardiness zone do you live in? I go through every single comment on my videos, and I want to understand exactly what kind of challenges this community is dealing with. If you clicked on this video because you have a dim garden patch and no one has ever given you clear, practical advice on what to plant there, you need to subscribe to this channel right away. Every week I release videos just like this one, highly specific, rooted in real experience, and designed to fix the actual problems that everyday American gardeners run into. No vague tips here. Click the subscribe button before we move on. It costs nothing, it takes a moment, and it guarantees you will never have to hunt down this type of gardening knowledge again, because it will just show up for you every week. Let us start with vegetable number 1, spinach. A ton of home gardeners plant spinach, but practically none of them put it in the correct spot at the correct time. Because of this, people mistakenly believe spinach is a quick spring crop that just gives up and dies on them in May or June for no reason. It is not a quick crop. It is just a crop being planted in the wrong environment. Here is exactly why putting spinach in the shade changes the game. Spinach will bolt, meaning it shoots up a thick seed stalk and makes every single leaf taste bitter all at once, when 2 things happen at the same time. The soil temperature gets above 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and the daylight hours stretch past a specific limit. When those 2 things line up, the plant gets an emergency signal to reproduce because summer is coming. Within a few days of that signal, the leaves turn awful, and there is no way to reverse the process. Your shady garden patch fixes the soil temperature part of that problem completely. Soil in the shade stays 8 to 12 degrees cooler than soil sitting in the blazing sun during those same summer months. That 8 to 12 degree drop is exactly what keeps your spinach safe and prevents it from bolting. If a sunny garden bed reaches 76 degrees in June, your spinach bolts instantly. But a shady bed might only be sitting at 66 degrees during that exact same week, meaning you are still a month away from hitting the danger zone. That buys you a spinach harvest that stretches way into July instead of ending in May. You should start your spinach seeds inside rather than planting them straight into the shady dirt. Shade keeps the soil cold, which slows down sprouting, and a seed waiting in cold, dark dirt can take up to 3 weeks just to poke through the surface. By starting transplants indoors, you skip that frustrating waiting period. You get to place a strong, growing plant right into the shady spot, instead of forcing a weak seed to fight for life with limited sunlight. You want to plant a new batch every couple of weeks all season long. Because your shady patch stays cool, you have a much longer window to do this. While a sunny bed might only let you grow 2 or 3 rounds of spinach before the heat kills it, a shady spot lets you plant 5 or 6 rounds, pushing right into early summer for most parts of the country. When you harvest, only take the outside leaves using the cut and come again trick. Snip the outer leaves near the bottom, but never touch the center crown where the new growth comes out. That center crown is the powerhouse. Keep it safe, and a single spinach plant will keep feeding you for weeks on end. Since your plants are working harder with less light in the shade, this harvesting trick is mandatory. It turns a measly 2 weeks of spinach into a solid 6 weeks of food. If you live in zones 3, 4, or 5, you should use your shady areas specifically to grow spinach in the summer. You can put it in full sun during the spring when it is cool enough everywhere, but move your operations to the shade when June brings the heat. For zones 6, 7, and 8, the shade actually makes growing summer spinach a real possibility, whereas full sun makes it impossible. Even with just 3 hours of morning light in Zone 7, you can still be picking spinach in July. For Zones 9 and 10, growing in the shade is not just an option for spinach, it is mandatory if you want any harvest at all during the warmer months. One last detail you should know. That weird, metallic, chemical taste you get from spinach bought in plastic bags at the store? You will not find that in spinach grown in a cool, shady yard and eaten the day you pick it. That nasty flavor comes from the cells breaking down while it sits on a truck, combined with the stress chemicals the plant creates when it bakes in the hot sun. Spinach grown in cool shade does not experience that stress. The leaves taste incredibly clean, mild, and crisp, easily beating anything you could buy at the grocery store, no matter how much you pay for it. If you just figured out why your spinach dies every June, that is the exact kind of light bulb moment this channel provides weekly. We talk about real plant biology and real timelines for your specific zone, so you can actually get more food out of your yard. If you have not subscribed yet, click the button now. People who subscribed 6 months ago are currently picking summer spinach from dirt that used to grow nothing. Subscribe now so you do not miss out on another season. Moving to vegetable number 2, Swiss chard. Chard does not just put up with the shade, it actually loves it. The reason why comes down to a specific biological trait that separates it from pretty much every other leafy green you can grow at home. Chard does not bolt. While spinach, lettuce, and arugula will all hit a wall with the heat and daylight that ruins them forever, chard simply does not care. At least, not in its first year, and not under any light or heat conditions you will find in a partially shaded yard. That is because chard is a biennial plant. Its whole life cycle takes 2 full years to finish. During year 1, which is when you plant and eat it, the plant feels absolutely no need to reproduce. It puts every ounce of its energy into making leaves and stems for you to eat. The heat that ruins your spinach and the long days that ruin your lettuce mean nothing to a first-year chard plant. It just keeps growing right through the exact same weather that kills off the rest of the greens on this list. When you put it in a shady spot, the results are incredible. The exact same chard seeds you plant in March or April will still be giving you food in October, and maybe even November. If you live in zones 6 through 10 and give it a little cover, you might be harvesting it in December. You plant it once and you get 8 to 10 months of non-stop food from a dark corner of your yard that used to be empty. To make this work, you have to pick it correctly. Cut the outer stalks all the way down by the dirt, getting as low as you can without damaging the middle of the plant. You must always leave that middle crown perfectly safe. That center section is the brain of the plant. It pushes out fresh leaves every 5 to 7 days when it is cool, and every 10 to 14 days when summer is at its hottest. The plant will just keep rebuilding itself endlessly as long as that center is alive and the roots are in the dirt. University studies have shown that a single chard plant, if taken care of properly, can give you over 10 pounds of food in one season. That is 10 pounds from a single plant that might only be getting 2 hours of direct sunlight a day. There is another cool thing about shade-grown chard that most people miss because they never test it side by side with sun-grown chard. The stems of chard grown in the shade are actually brighter and more colorful. The harsh sunlight in a full sun garden actually bleaches the color out of the stems during the summer. Your shady spot grows a much prettier plant. The leaves are also softer, the stalks are less stringy, and the texture is much nicer because the plant does not have to build tough armor to protect itself from blasting sunlight. Because it is so tender, shade-grown chard is fantastic to eat raw in salads, and it usually wins over picky eaters who think summer chard is too tough and bitter. If you are in zones 3, 4, or 5, get your seeds into that shady dirt as soon as it thaws in the spring. You can expect to start eating it by late May or early June. It will keep growing right through the summer and fall, and it actually tastes even better when the air gets chilly in September and October. In zones 6, 7, and 8, planting in early or mid-spring lets the plant get comfortable in the cool dirt before the summer heat hits. Your shady spot will protect it completely from that intense summer stress. For zones 9 and 10, you should grow chard in the shade during the fall and winter. Get it in the ground in October and pick it all winter long. The biggest mistake people make with chard is ripping the whole plant out of the ground because it looks tired after a big harvest. If you chop a chard plant down to 4 inches tall, it looks completely dead. It is not. The protected center is already gearing up to push out more food. Give it 10 days, and that sad little stump will be throwing brand new, soft leaves up to catch whatever sunlight peeks through. Your shady garden did not fail you. You just gave up 3 weeks too soon. Let us move to vegetable number 3, lettuce. Lettuce thrives in the shade for the exact same biological reasons that spinach does. The trigger that makes it bolt works off the same 2 factors: soil temperatures climbing over 75 degrees Fahrenheit and daylight hours stretching out. Your shady patch tackles that temperature problem head-on. That same 8 to 12 degree cooling trick that keeps your spinach alive will also keep your lettuce producing. And depending on where you live, the results can be even more impressive. Here is the specific advantage shade hands to lettuce that most growers totally miss. Lettuce is a very shallow-rooted plant. Its whole root system lives right in the top 2 to 3 inches of dirt. And the top layer of a shady garden bed in the middle of summer is measurably and significantly colder than that exact same layer sitting in the blazing sun. That shallow root zone is where shade gardening flexes its muscles the hardest, and lettuce cashes in on that benefit more directly than any other plant we are talking about today. You want to pick fast-growing, loose-leaf types exclusively for your shady spot. Forget about head lettuce, romaine, or iceberg. Stick to loose-leaf types like black-seeded Simpson, oak leaf, red sales, or butter crunch. These are ready in 35 to 45 days instead of the 2 months or more that head lettuce demands. Head lettuce requires a massive amount of solar energy to build that tight, dense core, and a shady patch just cannot provide it. They will sprout, but they will never form a proper head. Plant loose-leaf types in the shade and save yourself the headache. Plant a short row every 2 weeks all season long, rather than dumping all your seeds into the dirt at once. Your first batch planted in early spring will be ready in late April. The second batch in mid-May. The third in early June. And that fourth batch, planted in the shade where it is 8 to 12 degrees cooler, will be ready to eat in late June, when all the full-sun lettuce in your town has turned horribly bitter and gone to the compost bin. Picking those fourth and fifth batches out of the shade will permanently change how you view your dark garden corners. Use the cut and come again trick on all your loose leaf plants. Only snip the outside leaves off near the bottom using sharp scissors. Always leave the middle crown completely alone. A single loose leaf plant managed like this will keep feeding you for 8 to 12 weeks in a cool, shady spot. That is 3 times the food you would get from ripping out a single head of lettuce. Lettuce creates bitter chemicals, specifically lactucin and lactucopacrin, when it is stressed out by heat and dry soil. Your shady spot eliminates both of those stressors at once. Cooler dirt means less heat stress. Dirt that holds its moisture better in the shade means less drought stress. The lettuce growing in your dark corner in June and July is biologically far less stressed than any lettuce sitting in the sun. And a relaxed lettuce plant makes fewer bitter chemicals, resulting in far better tasting food. The lettuce you harvest from your shady spot on a warm July morning tastes just like spring lettuce. It is sweet, mild, and crunchy, because the environment it is growing in feels a lot more like spring than a hot July day. The biggest mistake with shade lettuce is planting head types and waiting for a miracle. Everyone who tries lettuce in the shade and gets frustrated is almost always just growing the wrong kind. Iceberg in the shade will drive you crazy. Black-seeded Simpson in the shade will make you dinner. Making that one simple choice takes 2 seconds and totally alters your outcome. Vegetable 4. Radishes. Every plant we have covered so far makes you wait weeks before your first bite. This one hands you a harvest in 3 to 4 weeks, even in the shade. And it does something else in your shady spot that nothing else on this list can do. It actually makes the entire area better for the plants growing around it. Here is the science behind why radishes work in partial shade. A radish root develops best when its cells form slowly in cool weather. In blazing sun and high heat, radishes will bolt, turn hollow inside, or get woody and dry the second the dirt temperature jumps over 65 degrees. Your shady spot runs colder, which slows down the radish growth by a few weeks. But that slower pace creates the tight, crunchy texture and clean, mild flavor that actually makes a radish a joy to eat. You are trading speed for quality when you grow radishes in the shade, and that trade heavily favors the home gardener. Plant the seeds a ½ inch deep and an inch apart. They will sprout in 3 to 5 days, even in cool, shady dirt sitting just above 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Plant a short row every 10 days instead of one giant patch. Pull them out when the root looks the right size, anywhere from marble to golf ball size, not by looking at the days to maturity on the seed packet. In the shade, that number on the packet is useless. The actual root size is your signal to harvest. Now, here is the secret job radishes perform in the shade. The one most people ignore, but veteran gardeners use on purpose. Radishes make fantastic marker plants. If you are putting down seeds that take a very long time to sprout, and some of the things on this list take up to 3 weeks to show up, plant radishes right in the same row at the exact same time. They pop up in less than a week and clearly outline the row, stopping you from accidentally digging up the slow seeds that still just look like bare dirt. You will harvest the radishes long before the slower plants even need that real estate. Additionally, as the radish roots grow, they physically break up the hard crust that forms on top of the dirt. Shady areas stay damp, which makes the soil surface pack down hard. The radishes naturally loosen that top layer, making it much easier for those slower seeds to finally push through the surface. 2 jobs, one seed, and a fast harvest in every single USDA zone from 2 all the way to 10. Shady radishes push the growing season 4 to 6 weeks past the point where sun-baked beds are just churning out awful, heat-ruined roots. The mistake here is leaving them in the shady dirt too long, assuming the cool weather gives them an unlimited shelf life. It does not. A radish in the shade stays good longer than one in the sun, but the clock is still ticking. Check them every couple of days once you hit 5 weeks from planting. Pull them the second you see the top shoulder of the root pushing out of the dirt. You get a wider window in the shade, but that window does eventually slam shut. We are 4 vegetables in, and every single one has a clear biological reason for thriving in your dark garden patch. These are not compromises. They are the right plants for the exact right environment. If this is how you prefer to learn about gardening, with solid facts, zone-specific details, and real methods that work in everyday American backyards, click subscribe right now. Join the thousands of gardeners across the country who show up here every week because this channel actually gives them advice they can walk outside and use that exact same day. Hit that subscribe button. You have already hung out here for a good chunk of time. Make sure you can find us again next week without having to dig through the search bar. Vegetable 5. Peas. Peas can handle the shade, and they are honestly one of the most incredibly useful plants you can cycle through a dark corner of your yard. The reasons go way beyond what most people who grow peas even realize. Peas actually fix nitrogen in the soil. Their roots team up with specific soil bacteria to pull nitrogen straight out of the air and turn it into a form that plants can actually eat. Studies show that a pea crop can pump a massive amount of free nitrogen right back into the dirt in just one season. In a shady spot, where you might be dealing with tree roots stealing nutrients or just lower overall soil energy, growing peas is one of the smartest ways to improve your dirt without buying expensive fertilizers. The plant feeds you above the ground, and it feeds your soil below the ground at the exact same time. Here is why they thrive in partial shade. Peas love cool weather and have a strict heat limit. Once the dirt temperature regularly crosses 75 degrees Fahrenheit, the plant just shuts down. In a sunny spot, that shutdown hits in late May or early June for most of the country. But in a shady patch running 8 to 12 degrees colder, that deadline is pushed back 3 to 5 weeks. Those extra weeks are when fresh peas taste their absolute best. They are incredibly sweet and soft because the plant is growing without the intense heat stress that turns the sugars in the pods into tough starch. Your shade-grown peas will taste sweeter for weeks longer than anything grown in the sun. You must plant the seeds directly in the dirt. Never start peas inside and try to move them. Those crucial partnerships with the soil bacteria form right as the seed sprouts, and they need to happen in the exact dirt where the plant will live its whole life. Digging them up breaks those connections and ruins their root systems. A seed pushed straight into cold, shady dirt will easily beat an indoor transplant planted 2 weeks earlier, every single time. Before you plant, coat your seeds in inoculant powder. You can grab this at any garden shop for a couple of bucks, and it boosts that nitrogen-fixing process by a massive amount. That means even more free fertilizer left in your shady dirt for whatever you plant next. Also, soak the seeds in water for 12 hours before planting to help them sprout faster in that cold soil. Make sure you give them a strong trellis to climb. Plants getting less sunlight will reach for it aggressively, so they need vertical support even more than sun-grown peas. Now, here is a bonus harvest most home growers completely miss. The pea shoots. The very top 2 to 3 inches of the growing vine, including the new leaves and little curly tendrils, are totally edible right through the season. They pack a massive, fresh pea flavor. Pinching off those growing tips actually forces the plant to branch out. It will grow 2 new vines where you pinched off one, which eventually leads to more flowers and more pods. You get a tasty snack and a bigger harvest just from pinching the tops. For zones 3, 4, and 5, get them in the shady dirt in early spring. The shade lets them keep producing into early summer, right when sun-grown peas are burning up. In zones 6 through 9, the shade makes a late spring or early summer harvest actually possible, long after a sunny patch would have killed them. If you are in zones 9 and 10, treat peas as a winter crop in the shade. Plant them in October and pick them through February. The mistake here is getting hung up on exactly how many pods you get, rather than how good they taste. A pea plant in the shade will give you slightly fewer pods than one in the sun. If you only care about numbers, you will be let down. But if you care about eating incredibly sweet peas in late June, long after the sunny plants are dead, you will never plant them anywhere else. Vegetable 6. Kale. The vast majority of people who claim they hate kale have just never eaten kale that was grown in a cool, shady spot and picked at the correct time. What they actually tasted was kale baked in the summer sun, left on the plant way too long, which turns it into a tough, bitter mess. Shade-grown kale is an entirely different food, and it comes back to plant biology. Kale creates specific chemicals that make it taste bitter and feel like leather. The plant produces these chemicals to defend itself against two things: blasting sunlight and extreme heat. The more stress the plant feels, the more of those bitter chemicals it pumps out. Your shady garden fixes both of those problems at once. Less direct light means less solar stress. Cooler air and dirt mean less heat stress. The kale sitting in your shady corner simply does not create as much of that bitter chemical as the exact same plant sitting in the full sun. You get leaves that are soft, mild, and actually delicious. This is the exact type of kale that changes people's minds. You do have to wait a little longer. Expect it to take about 20 to 25% longer to grow in the shade. If a seed packet says 55 days, give it closer to 70 days in a dark patch. That slower speed is not a bad thing. It is the exact process that builds a better tasting leaf. There is also a massive hidden benefit here. Kale is a magnet for cabbage moths and butterflies, which lay the caterpillars that absolutely destroy kale crops. These bugs hunt for food mostly by looking for the ultraviolet light bouncing off plants in the sun. Plants in the shade reflect way less UV light. Because of this, shaded kale gets ignored by these pests far more often than sun-grown kale. Less bugs means less damage, less time picking off worms, and way more food making it into your kitchen. When picking, snap off the outside leaves when they are 6 to 8 inches long. Do not wait for them to get a foot long. In the shade, keeping them small is even more crucial because shade-grown leaves will start getting tough at a smaller size than sun-grown ones. Pick them small and pick them often. Start from the bottom and work your way up, always leaving the middle crown alone. In zones 3, 4, and 5, shade is perfect for keeping your kale cool in the summer. It gives you great leaves right through the hottest months. In zones 6, 7, and 8, the shady patch perfectly connects your spring and fall growing seasons by beating the summer heat. In zones 9 and 10, shade kale is your go-to for fall and winter. The mistake here is letting the leaves get massive and deciding you just do not like kale. Almost all the kale people buy or grow gets picked too late. Harvest it early out of a shady spot, and it is a completely different meal. Vegetable 7. Green onions. Everything else on this list has a peak season where it thrives and a point where it dies off. Green onions do not really follow those rules. They just sit there, month after month, giving you a constant supply of an ingredient you probably cook with every week. Regular onions need long daylight hours and intense sun to trigger the plant to form a bulb underground. Without that blasting light, the bulb never forms right. But with green onions, you do not care about the bulb. You are just eating the green tops. So that whole daylight and sun requirement goes right out the window. Since the plant cannot use its energy to make a bulb in the shade, it pushes all that energy into growing the tasty green leaves you want to eat. Plant your seeds or sets an inch deep and 2 inches apart. They will grow slower in the dark, so add almost a month to the expected time. But once they get going, you just snip the green tops off about 2 inches above the dirt. The bottom part just regrows. You plant them once, and you can keep cutting them for months on end. Make sure you buy actual scallion varieties, not just baby bulb onions. Varieties like Evergreen Hardy White or Tokyo Long White are designed to pump out green tops and taste great for a long time. The secret perk of shade-grown green onions is that the flavor stays perfectly mellow. Scallions grown in the boiling summer sun can get an intense, harsh onion bite that completely takes over a dish if you eat them raw. Shade-grown scallions stay mild and balanced all summer long because they aren't stressed out by the heat. Plant a tight row in your shady spot this spring, and you will literally still be chopping onions off that same row in October with almost zero effort required. Let me ask you, have you ever tried planting something in a shady spot and watched it fail miserably? What did you try to grow? What zone do you live in? Roughly how much sun was hitting it? Put all those details down in the comments. I read every single one, and hearing about what went wrong in your yard is exactly how I figure out what video to make next. Tell me what happened. Vegetable 8. Beets. Beets produce a specific organic chemical called geosmin. That is the exact thing that gives beets that heavy, dirt-like flavor that makes people either love them or absolutely hate them. Here is a fact most folks miss. A beet pumps out way more of that earthy geosmin when it is stressed out by bright light and high heat. Your dark garden corner naturally drops the temperature, blocks the intense light, and keeps the soil perfectly damp, getting rid of both stress factors at the same time. Because of this, a beet grown in the shade has drastically less geosmin than one baking in the summer sun. It tastes sweeter, milder, and much more enjoyable, instead of just tasting like a mouthful of soil. If you want to convince a beet hater to give them another shot, give them a low-stress, shade-grown beet. The trade-off here is the size of the root. You are going to get beets the size of golf balls, maybe tennis balls, instead of the giant baseball-sized ones you get in full sun. But smaller means better flavor. Smaller beets are softer, they cook perfectly, and they taste incredible raw. It is a trade you want to make. You also get a massive double harvest from beets that most people just throw away. Every beet seed you plant is actually a little dried cluster with 2 to 4 seeds inside. That means a bunch of little plants will pop up in one spot, and you absolutely have to thin them out. Those little pulled plants are beet greens. They are closely related to Swiss chard and taste very similar. They have massive amounts of vitamins and minerals. Do not toss them in the yard waste, take them straight to the frying pan. Every time you thin out your shady beet patch, you are getting a free meal. Your dirt's pH level is incredibly important for beets, no matter where you plant them. It needs to be between 6.5 and 7.5. If it drops below 6, which is super common on the East Coast, your beets will stay tiny no matter how perfect everything else is. Go buy a cheap soil test. If your pH is low, mix some garden lime into the dirt a few weeks before you plant. That one step is the difference between a real harvest and total failure. Plant the seed clusters an inch deep and an inch apart. When they get a few inches tall, thin them so they are 3 inches apart. Pick fast-growing types like Detroit Dark Red or Red Ace, which handle low light way better than the giant, slow-growing varieties. For zones 3 through 6, use shaded beets to bridge the gap during the hot summer months when sun-grown beets taste awful. For zones 7 through 10, shade beets are your best bet for spring and fall, keeping the dirt cool enough to grow something you actually want to eat. Vegetable 9. Cilantro. If there is a single plant on this list that proves exactly why shade gardening works, and that will literally change how you garden this week, this is it. Here is the massive headache every cilantro grower deals with. You plant it, it looks great for a couple of weeks, and then boom, it shoots up a flower stalk, stops making leaves, and turns horribly bitter practically overnight. You try again, it bolts again. You figure cilantro is just too hard to grow, give up, and buy it at the store, assuming that is just how the plant works. That is not how cilantro works. That is just how it behaves when you bake it in the sun. Put it in the shade, and it is a completely different story. Cilantro bolts based on the exact same 2 triggers as spinach and lettuce: high heat and blasting sunlight hitting it at the same time. Putting it in the shade knocks out both of those triggers instantly. The soil stays colder, the light stays softer. 2 direct solutions to the exact problem that causes early bolting. What does this mean for your harvest? A cilantro plant sitting in the full summer sun in most of the U.S. gives you maybe 2 or 3 weeks of good leaves before it ruins itself. That exact same plant sitting in a partially shaded bed will give you 6 to 10 weeks of perfect leaves. We are talking about tripling your harvest window just by moving the plant into the shadows. That one fact changes the game permanently for anyone who has struggled with this herb. The issue you are having is not the variety, and it is not how you water it. Your problem is the location. Move it out of the sun, and the problem practically solves itself. Pick slow bolt seeds even for your shady spot, like Leisure, Santo, or Calypso. The shade slows down the bolting process, but picking the right seed stretches that window as far as it can possibly go. Both of those choices combined turn cilantro from a 2-week failure into a 2-month success. Plant a short new row every couple of weeks. When you harvest, clip the outside leaves and the top clusters, but never take more than a third of the plant at once. Since it grows slower in the dark, it needs more time to bounce back. Take a little bit and come back more frequently. Here is a massive flavor bonus that researchers know, but home growers never hear about. Cilantro creates its essential oils, the compounds that make it taste and smell amazing, much better under mild stress than extreme stress. Basting in the summer sun forces the plant to rush into survival mode, which drops its oil production. Growing it in cool, calm shade actually packs way more flavor into every single leaf. It does not just live longer, it literally tastes better. In zones 3 through 6, shade-grown cilantro is your secret weapon for the summer when the sunny beds are frying. In zones 7 through 11, combining shade with a slow bolt seed makes growing cilantro all year round an absolute reality. Vegetable 10. Parsley. Every other plant we have talked about is a one-season wonder. You plant it, pick it through the season, rip it out in the fall, and try again next year. Parsley totally shatters that rule, making it one of the absolute highest return on investment crops you can put in your shady dirt. Parsley is a biennial. It takes 2 full years to finish its life cycle. During year 1, the year you plant it, it only cares about making leaves and stems for you to eat. No flowers, no seeds, no rushing to reproduce. Because of this 2-year biology, a parsley plant that you establish in your shady garden this spring will pump out harvestable leaves from late summer all the way through the following spring. That is 12 to 18 months of non-stop food from one single planting. Nothing else on this list even comes close to that timeline. When you harvest, cut the outside stems all the way down at the dirt level, being careful not to damage the center growing point. And never chop off more than 1/3 of the plant in a single session. Because the shade makes it grow and recover a bit slower, exercising restraint is incredibly important here. Take what you need, let it rest for 10 to 14 days to rebuild its crown, and come back later. Do not plant these seeds straight into the outdoor dirt. Parsley is notoriously slow to sprout, sometimes sitting there for a full month before poking through, and cold, shady dirt will only drag that timeline out further. Start them indoors on a seedling heat mat set to 70 or 75 degrees and skip that frustrating waiting game entirely. You get to drop a strong, 6-week-old plant right into the shade instead of staring at bare dirt for a month. Now, here is a fantastic detail about shade-grown parsley that most people never realize. The stems grow much softer. Full-sun parsley builds tough, stringy stems to defend itself against strong winds and blasting sunlight. Down in the calm, protected shade, it does not need to build that armor. The tender stems make shade parsley way easier to chop up raw for salads, sauces, and garnishes without chewing on tough fibers. For zones 3 through 6, put it outside in the spring after your last frost. It will survive the winter and give you a massive burst of leaves the following spring, arriving weeks before any newly planted herbs are ready to eat. In zones 7 through 9, it basically stays evergreen through mild winters, giving you food through the coldest months. The biggest mistake here is getting impatient and cutting it too aggressively right after you plant it. The plant needs about 2 months in the dirt to build deep roots and a strong center to survive long-term. Wait 8 to 10 weeks until it looks strong and bushy before you start taking leaves. That early patience pays you back for the next year and a half. If you are still watching and haven't hit subscribe yet, I am going to be straight with you. You have been hanging out here for 30 minutes, and this advice is already changing how you look at your yard. The only question is if you want this exact level of practical, deep-dive information handed to you every single week going forward, or if you want to be stuck searching for answers the next time you hit a wall. Click subscribe right now. It takes 1 click, and my videos will automatically find you from now on. Hit the button. Stick around for this final plant, because it is the one thing most shade gardeners assume is entirely impossible. Vegetable 11. Bush beans. Every plant we have looked at so far has been a leafy green, a root, or a pod from a cool weather plant. Most people assume that is all a shady spot is good for. The thought of growing a warm-weather fruiting crop in the shadows seems like it breaks all the rules. This last vegetable proves it is absolutely doable. Bush beans require the most light out of anything on this list, needing at least 4 solid hours of direct sun to really work. But they make the list because they hand you something nothing else here can provide: a warm season protein harvest from a dark garden. Real, edible beans from a patch of dirt most people write off as totally useless. The trick is that bush beans are determinate. They create a fixed amount of pods over a short, concentrated window of time rather than growing endlessly all season. Because they operate on a tight schedule, they only need decent sunlight during that specific 3 to 4 week flowering and pod filling phase. 4 hours of morning sun is enough to get a reliable harvest in most of the U.S. You just have to manage your expectations on the yield. You will probably get 30 to 40% of the beans you would get from a full sun plant. But that is not a failure. That is a solid, real harvest from a spot that used to give you absolutely nothing. You must pick fast-growing varieties like Provider, Contender, or Royal Burgundy. These finish up in about 50 to 55 days, squeezing their production into a tighter window that perfectly matches your limited sunlight. Slow-growing beans that take over 2 months are trying to stretch their work across a timeline that a shady spot just cannot support. Find the absolute brightest spot in your shady area. Measure where the sun hits the longest and put your beans exactly there. Plant them an inch deep and 3 inches apart after the frost is gone. If you are growing them in pots in your shady corner, physically spin the pot to face the light every morning. That tiny trick can buy your plant an extra 30 to 45 minutes of sun a day, which translates directly into way more beans for your kitchen. The secret benefit here is the heat protection. Beans getting morning sun and afternoon shade skip the brutal heat stress of July and August. Hot afternoon sun can bake the soil past 90 degrees, which actually causes sun-grown beans to drop their pods entirely during a heat wave. Your shaded beans stay perfectly thermally stable. The pods grow smoother, stay tender, and rarely turn tough like the ones baking in the afternoon heat. Never plant climbing pole beans in the shade. Pole beans are indeterminate and need a massive amount of solar energy for sustained growth across a long season. Bush beans are quick and focused, matching the exact light budget you have available. Always pick bush beans for the shade. No exceptions. In zones 3 through 6, these are your main summer crop, and that afternoon shade actually keeps them tasting great during the late summer heat. In zones 7 through 9, you can pull off 2 separate plantings, one in late spring and one in late summer. That cooling afternoon shade is a massive lifesaver in the intense southern heat. That is 11 different vegetables pulling real food out of a space that most home growers just completely ignore. Here is my challenge for you right now. Not tomorrow, right the second this video wraps up. Walk outside and stare at that shady patch in your yard. Look at it completely differently than you did this morning, because what you just learned over the last 20 minutes completely flips its value. It is no longer a dead zone. It is a highly specialized growing environment with massive benefits that a full sun garden just cannot replicate. Colder dirt, locked-in moisture, fewer bugs, longer cool season harvesting, and 11 crops that are not just settling for the shade. Many of them actually produce significantly better, tastier food in the dark than they ever would roasting in the direct sun. You do not have a worthless, shady yard. You have a shade garden. and now you know exactly how to use it. If this video changed how you view your property, hit that subscribe button right now. Every single week, I drop highly detailed guides just like this for people who take growing their own food seriously. You took the time to watch every minute of this, and you deserve a channel that actually respects your time every week. Subscribe. Share this video with one person you know who constantly complains about their shady yard. It is completely free to send, and it might just be the best gardening advice they get all year. Before you click away, I have 2 questions for you. First, which plant on this list shocked you the most? Which one did you never expect to see on a shade gardening list? Put the number down in the comments right now. Second, tell me about that shady spot you have been struggling with. What is casting the shadow? What zone do you live in? How many hours of light do you think you are actually getting? Drop all those details below. I read every single comment, and your exact backyard setup might just be the perfect subject for my next video. I will see you in the next one.